Hi everybody. So Bob Dylan's just released his first studio album of new songs in 8 years, and it's called Rough and Rowdy Ways. So I got this CD a couple of days ago, and I just wanted to give my first impressions after having listened to it for the first time last night. Now, I've seen that John Heaton has done his video giving his first thoughts on the album. I'm going to watch that, but I've deliberately not watched it yet because I wanted to not be influenced by anything that he has to say, but I'm really interested to watch that. I'll put a link to that video in the description down below if you want to see that. But yeah, let's just have a quick look at this first of all, and I'm going to give my initial thoughts of what I think. So there you go. The disc opens out. It's got a separate section sort of dedicated to the Murder Most Foul song, the sort of epic JFK song that's on disc 2. That's the inside there, and just quickly show you each disc. This is disc 1, the main album, and disc 2, that's just got Murder Most Foul on it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm considering this to be part of the album, even though they've put it on its own disc separately. But I think that's the last song on the album. So anyway, first of all, here's just a quick techie bit. So when I ripped this album onto my computer, I was amazed at the bit rate of the files. It's really low. That suggests to me that this hasn't been brick walled in any way like a lot of modern CDs are that are just too loud, and that kind of backed it up when I played it. It sounds absolutely fantastic. So they've really gone for sound quality on this CD, I think, and I'm not really sure how much improvement I could get on a vinyl version. But anyway, there you go. I've shown the bit rates there for anybody who's interested in that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm going to refer to my notes that I've got on my phone here, because what I did was I listened to the album once and I gave notes of my first thoughts as I was going through each song. So this isn't an in-depth analysis of the album after having sort of got to learn it over the years. This is literally, I've played one song each time. So the first song, I Contain Multitudes, I thought that had a real nice vibe to it. It was very, very chilled. And I thought it would fit well on Modern Times album, the album that, from 2006, which I've got there. And that's the reason I put that there, really, is because this is a bit of a common theme as we go through. There was a lot of this album that felt to me like it would fit on Modern Times, and I thought that was a great album by Bob. So that was the first song, I Contain Multitudes. Second song, False Prophet. I thought there was great guitar licks on this, sort of behind the main guitar, sort of chugging guitar riff that goes throughout the song. Bob's sounding good here as well. So, of course, sometimes he can be a bit growly these days. That's no surprise to anybody. But I thought he was sounding really good here. And he does sometimes when his voice isn't going that growly. There is still a really nice voice in there, albeit sort of old man Bob voice. And it was definitely on evidence here. And it felt like being in the studio with them on this. It's a great live feel to this song. I felt that going throughout the album, but it was the first time it sort of really hit me was on that particular song. And those first two songs, I Contain Multitudes and False Prophet, they're both they're both songs by Bob, where he's singing a lot about himself. So that was a sort of a theme to the first two songs there. But a real good, nice 2-song opening. I did really enjoy those two. Third song, My Own Version of You. So, of the 3 songs so far, I would say this was probably my least favourite. Maybe that'll change in time. Maybe it'll be a grower and I'll love it. I don't know. But it felt to me like 3 minutes into the song that it had done everything that it was going to do. But I could see that I had another 3 minutes left on it. Now, when I say that, I mean that sort of musically rather than lyrically. The thing with Bob is he's always going to have a lot to say continuing in the song, but musically I felt like I knew that it was just going to carry on doing the same thing for another 3 minutes. So still a nice song, but yeah, my least favourite of the 3 so far. Next up is I've Made Up My Mind to Give Myself to You. Now, I thought Bob was sounding really good again on this one, singing it really nicely. And again, there's that theme with Modern Times. I thought that it was very reminiscent of a song that could have appeared on Modern Times. Now, it also struck me as I was listening to it that it could be a song that, with some different lyrics, could very easily have been a Christmas song. I made note that the song was not in any hurry in any way, but that it was really quite a lovely song. So I really enjoyed that one. But it's certainly not an up-tempo album so far. The next song then is Black Rider. And right from the start, because of the chords used and the notes used, this felt like a more sinister sort of kind of song right from the beginning. And it felt about halfway through as though it was going to blow up and become something big and blow up into an epic song. And I noted at the time that I thought that it probably wouldn't do, and it didn't. It felt like it was going to do, but it just sort of carried on that pace. And there was a very unexpected lyric in this song that took me by surprise. The size of your cock will get you nowhere. That certainly grabbed my attention. Wasn't expecting to hear that. But yeah, it's a real sort of nice minor key, sort of broody song. I enjoyed that one. Next up is Goodbye Jimmy Reed, and some energy into the album. This is definitely a change of pace. So it was a good up-tempo 12-bar blues was this one, and I think the album benefited from having that change of pace at this point. Needed to sort of just a little pick-me-up, if you like. This song I noted was the one that most to me felt like it was a sort of a mid-60s Bob song. You could imagine him singing this song on something like Bringing It All Back Home and using his voice from that era. Of course, he sounds very different, but if he used that mid-60s voice, if he had it, it would have sounded like something that could have come from that era, definitely. Next, we're on to a song called Mother of Muses. So immediately felt to me like it was almost like a hymn or a gospel song that he was singing. Again, it sounded like Modern Times, but again, for the second time on this album, I'm noting that it almost had like a Christmassy vibe to it. You could imagine this being worked into not a traditional Christmassy pop song, but more of a sort of a Christmas carol hymn type of song. Not one of my favourites, but again, it was a nice song. Next of all, Crossing the Rubicon. So it was another blues-based tune, but a much slower pace. It didn't particularly grab me massively, but the one thing that I did like about it was, again, it felt like it had a really great live feel to it. I felt like I was in that studio with Bob and his band. Now, next up was Key West, and this was the first song where I had kind of any pre-existing knowledge. I hadn't heard the song, but I had heard various people on the internet describing this as being their favourite song so far. But that's as much as I knew. I deliberately avoided actual full-on reviews of the album because, again, I wanted to make my own mind up and not be swayed by what people were saying about the album. Ironically, as I'm telling you my thoughts on the album and hoping that you'll listen to what I'm saying, I realise the irony there. But anyway, this song is called Key West Philosopher Pirate. So it's 9.5 minute song, so that immediately sort of grabs your attention of, how is Bob going to keep your attention for 9.5 minutes? But he's done it so many times over the years. We should have faith in Bob to do something like that. Immediately I felt that this had a vibe of Most of the Time, which came from Oh Mercy. I hadn't specifically made the Oh Mercy connection as a friend of mine had, but I did make a connection to the song Most of the Time, that it felt sort of quite a lot like that. There was some real nice references in it to sort of classic American literary heroes. So I heard Buddy Holly mention, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg. I think I heard him mention Jimi Hendrix in there at the same time as well. But again, one listening, I could be wrong. There was some really nice accordion that prompted me to make note of that fact that was going through. And I remember now thinking back that it was just sort of some nice background accordion, but that at various points during the song, it just got a little bit more. There was a little bit more to that accordion, and it just sort of jazzed it up a little bit. So that was nice. Again, I thought Bob was sounding really good on this. And the one thing that struck me during this song was that I really felt like Bob cares about what he's doing still. The guy's just recently had his birthday. I think he was 79. I hope I've got that one right. But it really sounds to me like he respects these songs that he's singing. He's trying to give them what he can and make them have the emotion that they can have. So I can't fault Bob for effort on this album. And just before I go on to the last song, Murder Most Foul, the other thing that it reminded me of here, listening to Key West and having that thought about how much Bob cares, is it got me thinking about the contrast between what Bob Dylan's doing on albums and what somebody like Paul McCartney's doing on albums. Because, again, those of you that watch my videos will know that Paul McCartney's sort of the main guy for me. And there's a massive difference here. They're coming at things with Bob. and this isn't going to be any great surprise to anybody, I don't think, but it really struck me. With Bob, it's the lyrics. So with Bob, you might be a minute into a song, and musically, it might be that it's going to just carry on doing exactly the same for the rest of its 5, 6, 7 minutes. But lyrically is going to go in all sorts of directions. And it struck me that that's almost the complete opposite of what McCartney's doing these days. So with McCartney, after a minute, he might have done lyrically most of what he's going to do in the song, but musically, he could be going off in all sorts of directions. I think of something like Despite Repeated Warnings on Egypt Station. You know, that just takes you in all sorts of directions, but lyrically, it probably doesn't. So I'm not saying that one's better than the other. Overall, I probably have a preference to the way that Paul McCartney does it. But I know, for example, people who are a lot more interested in the lyrics of the songs than I tend to be will probably certainly favour the way that Bob's doing it. But I could certainly see a complete contrast there between the way that those two people are doing their records these days. But I think both of them are operating at such an artistic level above anybody else who was around at their time, in my opinion anyway. So, yeah, we've gone to the second disc, Murder Most Foul, and I believe that when the vinyl comes out, that's going to occupy one side of vinyl on its own. So this is the song that I had heard half of when it came out several weeks ago when Bob put it online. I'd heard the first half of it, but I kind of backed off. I wanted to save myself for the album. This is the epic. A lot of it is about JFK, but it goes off in other directions as well. What have I got here then? So around 9 minutes in, I made a note. I think I'd just got a bit further than I had in my previous listen, and it felt like a bit like one of the songs earlier. It felt like it was about to explode. It suddenly sort of built up and started to rumble, and I thought, oh, here it goes. And then it just came back down again to where it had been before. So that was interesting. Again, he won't quite go off in other musical directions during the song, but he makes you sort of think that he's going to, and he holds your attention that way. There was lots of references to things like the Beatles, there was Woodstock, and like lots of historical touch points. And I got a feeling, and I may annoy some people here, so hear me out on this one. It felt like with all the things throughout history that he was mentioning, it was almost like his version of Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, which I know can be contentious. A lot of people hate that song, but I just meant in terms of it referencing different parts of history. It's a completely different song. It's not in any way like We Start the Fire musically, but I just felt that there was some similarities there in sort of touching on various points of history throughout. But other than that, it's as far removed from that song as it can be. So that's the album finished. My overall thoughts on it. So as I've kind of mentioned, once songs have started their initial pattern, it tends to sort of progress with that pattern for the rest of the song. Now, I listened to the CD through headphones and the quality was superb. I mentioned earlier on about the going techie with the bit rate, but I think that just sort of proved that they've given these songs room to breathe. They're not packing it with, they're not making everything at the same level, you know, the guitars, the bass, the drums, Bob's vocals, everything's got its own room to breathe, and it really did sound fantastic. Another sort of similarity that I sort of found with Bob and what McCartney's doing is they both seem to be giving thought at the moment to, you know, could this be their last album? And it may well be, it may well not be, only time will tell. But both of them seem to be making sure that if it is, they're going to go out on a high. And I mean that in terms of the care that they're putting towards the albums. So in terms of the songs that are on this, I think overall, I'm comparing it to, for example, Tempest, Together Through Life, Modern Times. Those have been his recent albums of his songs. I haven't really focused too much on the cover version albums like Triplicate and those. But I think on first listen, those other albums had higher highs, like Duquesne Whistle, I think was fantastic. Paying Blood, I Feel a Change Coming On. I didn't hear anything here that grabbed me initially as much as that, but overall I felt that this album did hold my attention more, and I think I'll probably go back to this as a whole album more than I'll go back to those, even though there might be some songs, on individual songs on those that I love possibly more than this. But again, time will tell. I've had one listen so far. So yeah, I'm really happy with this overall at first. I think if I'm in the mood for a slower album, this will be one that I'll go to. You know, this isn't, you're not going to be rock and rolling to this much, apart from maybe Goodbye Jimmy Reed. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah, certainly going to give it more chance. That's Rough and Ready Ways. I would love to hear your comments, as always, on the album if you've heard it. Let me know what you think, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.